good people.
See who's here. Jim Condon.
Present.
Joe Holman.
Here.
Dave Oganow.
Here.
Mark Dornfeld.
Here.
Dick Fink.
Here.
Shannon Wild.
Here.
John Westwell, all present. Proof of notice.
As posted on April 25th.
Okay, I will now turn it over to Mr. Sable, the district administrator, to conduct the nominations for president.
All right, so I just do the president, and then from there, once president gets nominated,
Once he gets in.
handled by them. Okay, so I will take a motion from anybody on the board for president.
I nominate John Westwell.
Okay,
I will second that.
Just hang on.
yeah, are there any other nominations? Okay. Gonna take a roll call vote? Oh, 3 times? We should have done this in workshop. So any other nominations?
And make sure everybody hears it.
Yep,
It's not really quick.
I'm pretty loud.
Use your teacher voice.
Anybody else? Okay. So, we'll do a roll call then. So, starting on the right.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm done.
Motion carries 7-0.
You can't go home. You're
Nominations are now open for vice president.
Nominate Dick Fink.
Is there a second to that?
I would second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Okay, just wait, I didn't get that.
Motion by Dick,
Okay,
or
yeah, and who was the second? There were 2 people, that's, okay.
are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? If not, nominations are closed. Jim?
Aye.
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 Aye. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0. Nominations are now open for clerk.
I will nominate Shannon if she will accept as clerk.
Only if Dick
Shannon.
promises to be my backup.
You better show up every meeting.
Is there a second to that nomination?
I will second.
Seconded by Jim Condon. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. We'll now cast a vote. Shannon?
Aye.
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 Motion carried 7-0. Nominations are now open for treasurer.
I nominate Jim Condon.
Motion by Dick to nominate Jim Condon. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Shannon Wild. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
You can nominate yourself if it's legal.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are now closed for treasurer. Shannon?
Aye.
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 Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Now, resolution 1617245, approval of agenda for tonight. And allow me to deviate from agenda to officially conduct the meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Joe Holman,
Second.
second by Nora. Any questions on the agenda? Joe?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carried 7-0. Just how I usually do it is whoever makes the nomination, I'll start with them for the vote. Okay, citizen comments. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. It's resolution 1617246. Need a motion for approval. Motion by Jim. Seconded by Joe. Any questions on the minutes? Jim?
Aye.
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 Motion carried 7-0. So we'll go clockwise.
It's usually the first say, I don't know, we'll figure it out.
Okay, do we have a, I don't know, do we have an FFA report tonight? Student council report?
My name is Rachel Wagner, and I'm the Vice President of the Student Council.
Kevin Emmerling, I'm treasurer.
And this last weekend, we were supposed to do a highway cleanup, but that got canceled due to bad weather. As we're winding the school year down, we will be nominating people for office this Wednesday, and we will be voting next week Wednesday for officers. We have 2 more service projects that need to be completed. One is a breakfast food drive that is going on this weekend. We are collecting breakfast food, granola bars, yogurt, stuff like that, for the elementary kids on the parking who are not able to eat breakfast in the morning. Also, Kevin's.
We the Humane Society project, we're kind of in the process of working with the Humane Society to decide what we're going to do. They had a spring cleanup day, but we weren't able to get it together in time for us to take a group of kids out there, so we're working with them to see what we can do to help them.
These committees or service projects also lead up to spirit points that will be calculated and will be rewarded for the class that has the most spirit points. And it's a battle between the seniors, juniors, and sophomores right now. And the spirit reward is the movie. We also have a team building lunch for our student council members, and that will happen sometime in the last week of May.
You have prom coming up
Yes, this Saturday.
this Saturday?
Mhm.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Great, Phil.
Are there any communications?
None tonight.
Okay, you want to go down to the next report there?
Sure.
So we'll go down to superintendent, administrative report, superintendent report, we'll do the Bear financial illustration report.
So Mike Clark is here. Mike's our financial advisor when it comes to the referendum, and he's been providing some guidance and input to us for months now behind the scenes, and he did come early in the process to share with us some options for the financial plans associated with the referendum. And there definitely been some updates. So, and are there any updates to the one that I have? You emailed it, is it good to go?
That's good.
Okay.
Things change, but, you
Yeah, I
know,
didn't know if there's
unless we're
anything last
updating by the minute. Actually, rates have come down just a touch since we ran these last, they popped up, and we're kind of in a cycle where rates are trading in a fairly narrow range. Basically, just wanted to go over a few concepts of the financing plans as they look now based on the more current information. I'll also walk through some of the things in terms of the process, the parties involved with the financing, as well as some IRS regulations you'll have to encounter in terms of your spend down. I don't think they have any real life impact, but just things for you to be aware of just because of the low interest rates you're going to earn on the proceeds of the bonds. Probably wouldn't put you in a position, but I just want to review those concepts as well. And I wanted to start out just in terms of the financing goals. Obviously, we want to meet the tax rate impact that was projected through the referendum. We want to achieve the lowest overall financing cost while again kind of smoothing out the impact of the financing over the life of the debt. And obviously, you need to have the funds to pay the bills when they come due, matching. So again, I don't think that will be a real problem based on the options we have laid out tonight. Minimize interest rate risk. Rates are low. If you recall, it's here right after the election in November, and rates had shot up. and we had some uncertainty, and we went with some conservative assumptions going into the referendum, just because we didn't know exactly what, if it would continue to rise, or if they're gonna fall. Rates have actually come down since then, and so rates are favorable. There's a lot of Wisconsin school debt that's gonna be coming to market over the next 30 to 60 days. Some carryover from November, and then obviously the April referendums. A lot of districts trying to move, get into the market and take advantage of the interest rates. And then make use of bank qualified debts. Again, there's typically this type of debt, and we'll get into that in a little more specifics in a few minutes, have lower interest rate costs to issuers. So we want to definitely try to maximize that, and not, sometimes trying to use that kind of works against some of our other goals. We'll have to find the balance. But obviously, future considerations, interest rate market, as I mentioned, it was and we'll look at the interest rate chart in a few minutes. Rates are very good right now. There's not a lot of municipal debt coming to market. Although I think that's going to, with the dip in rates, I think you'll see some refundings coming to market, and obviously some new money deals. Valuation growth, we used 1% for the referendum, which was below your historical average, again, trying to be conservative. And then your construction schedule. I'm not sure if that's really even totally plotted out at this point, but that can impact. We just want to make sure we have the funds, you have the funds in hand to pay the bills when those come due. Just going through some terminology. Project construction draw schedule and estimated earnings. This is, as I mentioned, some IRS requirements. Depending on how large your borrowings are and when you borrow them, you have some spend down requirements you have to meet for the IRS. The IRS is giving you the ability to borrow on a tax exempt basis. The idea behind these rules are that you're not borrowing low and just turning around and investing high. In this environment, and has been for the last several years, we've been borrowing low and investing even lower. So most likely, these requirements, and I'll get into what it says penalty, and it sounds worse than it really is. It's unlikely you'll find yourself in this situation, because there's by having these certain spend down, you can see depending on the 2-year spend down or the 3-year spend down, depending on how large your borrowings are, those are the spending targets of the proceeds. What happens if you don't hit those targets, and it's true whether it's the 2-year or 3-year, is that you would have to rebate interest you earned above your allowable rate of return if you don't hit those targets. In this environment, one, you're not going to most likely earn more than what your allowable limit is, because again, investment rates, although they've improved, are still lagging, because let's just say probably and again, just ballparking it, but 3%, you can earn 3% before you find yourself in a rebate situation. You're not going to earn 3% anywhere anytime soon. So these are the spend down targets, and then the financing plans we'll look at in a second. You'd be in the 3-year spend down windows anyway, and they're fairly generous. I mean, you have to spend 5% of the proceeds in the first 6 months, and then you have 36 months to spend 100%. So I don't think your construction schedule is going to go out to the 3 years. But so again, I don't think it's a big deal, but you hear those terms, when you start reading some of the legal documents, they'll reference it just to make you aware of what those situations, what those terms mean. I know we've talked about this before. Any questions at this point?
Is that from the day you borrow the money, or the day you start?
It's the date of the borrowing. So basically, when the borrowing closes, you receive the funds on that date. That starts your window. Looking at page 2 now, bank qualified versus non-bank qualified debt. Again, we've touched on this in prior meetings. Bank qualified, there's a tax benefit for banks that buy this type of debt. And since there's a tax benefit, they're willing to accept a lower interest rate on the debt, because they're getting also the benefit on their taxes. But you're limited to borrowings of $10 million in a calendar year or less. This would, any cash flow borrowing you would do any tax exempt. And once you designate and do a bank qualified issue, you're limited to $10 million of tax exempt debt in that calendar year. So it's not like you can do a $10 million bank qualified issue and then turn around and do another $5 million non-bank qualified in the calendar year to total up your borrowings. So you're limited to the 10 million. And so the non-bank qualified then is anything over 10 million. And there's an interest rate difference between the two, and we'll look at a chart in just a second. So,
What does bank qualified mean?
well, it's again, banks that purchase that debt, you get additional tax benefit for banks that hold that type of debt. So it's an IRS term, just to designate the issue that it's bank qualified. So if a bank chooses to purchase it, they know that they'll be able to receive that tax benefit by holding those bonds.
We assume more risk if we do like a 10-10, 4.5, year 1, year 2, year 3. So with the interest rates, that could go up.
I'm sorry, can you?
So if we borrow 10 million first calendar year, second calendar
Okay,
year,
yeah.
another 10, 4.5, are we gonna be assuming more risk, or are we locked in?
No, that's one of the things we'll talk about, is that the longer you go, is you do incur more interest rate risk. But the concept that we would do is we'd want to lock in the long end,
Sure.
then do the short, and then keep the shortest end to kind of minimize some of that.
Okay.
And that is the trade-off by trying to maximize having all three issues be bank qualified, is that it would take time to be able to issue all the issues. And we'll talk about the timing when we look at those examples. The parties involved, financial advisor, that's the role that Baird plays. Bond counsel, Quarles and Brady. Disclosure counsel is also Quarles and Brady. And this is something relatively new to transactions in terms of something you didn't see pre-2009, 2010 during the recession and financial crisis. And there's a greater emphasis on verifying that the information issuers are putting in their documents is true and valid. And the idea behind it is by having, again, it's the same firm but different attorneys, kind of go through your official statements, go through a questionnaire with you, do some research in terms of making sure that there's no lawsuits, any of those types of things, that the information is as accurate as possible. Now, the statement will have, to the best of our ability and those types of things associated with it. But again, it gives the comfort, because when you get bidders for your debt, the vast majority of time, they're reselling your debt to somebody else, and so they have an obligation to research that your information is correct, because they're relying on that when they're reselling it to someone else. And so to have disclosure counsel involved to help provide that comfort, we do think it brings more bidders to the table. We can't quantify if it saves you interest costs or not, it's just impossible. But we do know that there's underwriters who will not bid if there's not disclosure counsel as part of the transaction. In the rating agency, and looking at some analysis, our recommendation would be Standard & Poor's. I think when we had this conversation, we met a couple weeks ago, we just think that they look at smaller issuers, a little more friendly to smaller issuers. Again, and just looking at some comparables, I think we line up well. And again, that's kind of an unknown, because right now you don't have debt, so you don't have a bond rating. And we're using, in the examples you'll see in just a minute, we're using a high A-rated scale. And if you come into the AA level, that actually will improve the situations we're looking at. So, all these costs will be paid by the winning bidder. It is a cost. They roll it into the interest rate, but you will receive the full amount approved for projects. So what the voters approved would be available for projects. So the cost will be kind of rolled in to the transaction. Timetable, obviously, we're starting to prepare the documents. We're coordinating with bond counsel, disclosure counsel. We'll be contacting Standard & Poor's in terms of getting that lined up. We're targeting June 5th And that may change, you know, if we get everything in the rating in place for the first sale. We take bids in the morning, we present those at that board meeting that night, and then we help coordinate the closing. I know the district's going through the process of evaluating who's gonna manage your proceeds. Because that is an important component, because any interest that you earn on the proceeds that go into your construction fund are eligible to use towards projects. Which is different than interest you'll earn on the debt service fund, which goes to pay the bond payments, and we'll talk about that in a second. The remaining to be determined, and that's what we're gonna turn to next. Any questions on any what I just covered? The next page is the bond buyer graph. This page here. Just give you historical perspective on where rates are at. Obviously, last summer, where rates were exceptionally low, they increased, but from a historical perspective, still very attractive. The next page it says bank qualified, non-bank qualified. And again, this changes daily, but you can get a sense of the market is the bank qualified debt, especially in that middle range, and then out towards the longer, that's where the spread difference is, that the benefit, and right now we're estimating about 40 basis points. And again, there's other factors that go into that, you know, the underlying credit rating, how much supply is in the market, but you can see it's a pretty significant benefit for using bank qualified. But to your point, if interest rates move up 60 basis points while you're waiting takes you to the next phase, that benefit can be minimized. Now, going to the page that says scenario 1 up in the corner, this is the concept that, you know, obviously we had different, we looked at different scenarios throughout the referendum process. We didn't know which way interest rates were going to go. Rates have actually moved in your favor. This is a concept that we discussed previously, is looking at the 3 bank qualified pieces. The one dated July 17, that would be the June sale. The July 1 date would start your 3-year spend down, your 3-year spend down. And we're using current rates. Again, we're using an A1 scale. And again, if you come in above that, then that would even be more beneficial in terms of rates. You can see we're using a 3.38% there, again, on a bank qualified basis. And again, we're putting the majority of the bonds out long. We do have that early payment just because we do want to start in 17-18 the levy. Now, theoretically, I mean, we could push some of that down and use some of that levy for the next issue, but we'll look at that a little bit more in detail as we get closer. The next issue would be dated March 1, 2018. We actually would be able to sell this in January, so you're waiting about 6 months to get to the next issue. January historically is a very strong month for selling debt. January, February happens a lot of bond funds and things. Clean up some positions and have money to spend. Also, contributions that go into pension funds, insurance companies. They're not as active in terms of buying investments over the holidays, so they kind of accumulate some cash and they like to put it to work in January, February. So you're waiting about 6 months. We've added 25 basis points to that scale. Again, a little bit shorter maturities, except for the bottom, because you get 20 Marches to make payments. So by getting to March 18, you have another year. So we add a year there. And then on the final phase, we've added 75 basis points to that. Again, it's a shorter plus the extra year again at the bottom, so it would be a 22-year payback over this time. And then the average would be, we're projecting based on these interest rate assumptions and using 1% valuation, $2.14 in terms of the average tax impact. Again, we're communicating 221 for the referendum.
So I have a question on the, says first interest for the very first column. So dated July 1, 2017. So the bonds are sold July 1, 2017, but interest, it doesn't start accumulating on that until...
No, it starts accumulating.
Yeah.
You just don't make the payment. again, but you haven't had the opportunity to levy yet. So your first payments will be March 1 of 18.